My name is Emily. One night at a family dinner in Austin, my father looked at me and said, "Raising me was the biggest mistake he ever made." What he didn't know was that I had already seen the bank notice with my name on it. If you've ever had a family secret explode like that, tell me about it in the comments. I got to my parents' house later than usual, blazer still on, laptop heavy in my bag. The kind of Friday where dinner felt like another obligation instead of a break. My mom was already setting plates on the table. My brother was talking about rent going up again. Robert sat at the head, sleeves rolled, the posture he used when he expected agreement. No one asked about my day. That wasn't unusual. I slipped into my chair, phone buzzing once before going still. My mom asked if I wanted water. Someone passed the bread. The room felt tight, not hostile, just careful, like everyone knew where the edges were. Robert cleared his throat. "Raising you was our biggest mistake." The sentence landed cleanly. No build-up, no joke afterward to soften it. My brother kept cutting his steak. My mom adjusted a napkin that didn't need fixing. Someone checked their phone like a notification had just come through. "Why?" I asked. The word came out flat, not challenging, just a question you'd expect to be answered. Robert leaned back. He started listing things instead. Sacrifice, stress, how much everything cost, how parents don't get thanked. Money came up fast, then stayed there. It always did. While he talked, his eyes flicked toward me like he was checking a balance sheet. "At least your credit is still usable," he added, almost casually. "That's something." The fork paused halfway to my mouth. I didn't say anything. He kept going, already on to another point, already done with that one. My phone lit up again on the table. An email preview slid across the screen. Austin Downtown Branch. Account review required. 10 days. I turned the phone face down. My mom asked if anyone wanted more potatoes. Robert mentioned a number then, exact, down to the last digit. It took a second to realize it matched what I had in my checking account. I'd never told him. Not recently. Not ever. Someone laughed at something unrelated. It was quick and gone. I noticed then that the small security camera in the corner of the living room had a dark lens. Robert followed my glance. "Maintenance," he said. "Been acting up." I nodded, like that explained everything. "Can you pass the salt?" I asked. My hand was steady when I took it. The room stayed silent in that specific way where sound is allowed, but reactions aren't. Robert paused just long enough to look irritated that the moment had shifted away from him, then went right back to talking. My phone buzzed again, then again. I pushed my chair back before anyone finished eating. "I should go," I said. Robert was still mid-sentence, explaining how kids don't understand responsibility. My mom opened her mouth, then closed it. No one asked me to stay. The next morning started with messages. Not group texts, those stayed silent, but private ones, spaced out just enough to feel coordinated. My aunt wrote first. "Your dad sounded really upset. Maybe don't make this bigger than it needs to be." My brother followed. "Can we talk later? This kind of thing reflects on all of us." By the time I reached the office, 3 more had come in. Different wording, same direction. At my desk, I barely had time to drop my bag before HR asked if I could stop by. No urgency in the email. That made it worse. The woman across from me kept her tone neutral, eyes on her screen. "A routine background flag popped up," she said. "Nothing serious yet, just wanted to check in." "What kind of flag?" She turned the monitor slightly. "Credit alert. My name. A number I didn't recognize." "It should clear once it's verified," she added, already sounding bored with it. Back at my desk, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mom. "Your father is really hurt," she said when I picked up. "He's been calling everyone, trying to explain." "Explain what?" "That you misunderstood, that he was worried about you, about the future, about all of us." She paused, waiting for me to agree. "He's only trying to protect the family," she added. The wording landed exactly where it was meant to. I didn't answer right away. She took that as hesitation, not refusal. "Just don't escalate this," she said gently. "You know how things get." By lunch, it was clear Robert had been busy. A cousin I barely spoke to texted asking if everything was okay with your dad. Another asked if work stress was making me sensitive. That night, I met Maya at a coffee shop that stayed open too late for people who didn't want to go home. She arrived first, already seated, jacket still on. "What happened?" she asked. I told her, short version, no commentary. She listened without interrupting, then asked one question. "Do you have paperwork?" "No." "Then get it." No reassurance, no outrage, just that. She slid her phone across the table and pulled up a credit report site. "Pull everything," she said. "History, not just alerts." The screen loaded slowly. Accounts, dates, numbers. One line didn't fit. A loan opened years ago, small enough to ignore, old enough to blend in. The branch location caught my eye, the same one Robert used. The signature was scanned, not original, close enough to mine that someone trying wouldn't notice the difference. "That's not normal," Maya said. "No." She leaned back. "Your family runs on a simple system," she added. "Whoever stays calm the longest gets to be right." The next call came from my brother. "If you push this," he said, skipping any greeting, "people are going to start looking at all of us." "At what?" "At everything," he replied. "You don't want that." That night, an email arrived from the bank. Formal, polite, a scheduled appointment request. 72 hours. Verification of account holder identity. I stared at the screen while the coffee shop started closing chairs around us. Maya checked the time, then stood. "You're not crazy," she said, "but you're also not safe." "What do I do?" She shrugged. "You show up with facts," she said, "and you don't warn anyone first." My phone buzzed again. A message from my mom. "Please don't hurt your father over something that was meant to help." The bank confirmation sat open on my screen. Date, time, address. Maya was already pulling on her jacket when the notification banner slid down again, confirming the appointment. The words "Mandatory Review" bolded at the top as the barista called last orders, and I reached for my phone to accept it before anyone could call back and ask me not to. The bank lobby was already busy when I arrived. People stood in line with folders tucked under their arms, the kind of morning where everyone looked like they had something to lose. I checked in at the desk, gave my name, and waited until a woman called me back into a small office. She placed a thin stack of papers on the table between us. "This is the loan in question," she said. The first page showed my name, my address, and a date from years ago. I didn't remember signing anything then, but the amount was small enough that it wouldn't have stood out. The next page was worse. A temporary power of attorney, limited in scope, time-stamped during a week I knew I wasn't even in Texas. "I was traveling that week," I said. She nodded and slid the page closer. "Do you have proof?" I opened my laptop and pulled up an old flight confirmation, then an email thread from my boss approving the trip. The dates lined up cleanly. "That helps," she said. As she flipped through the rest, patterns started to surface. Notices sent to my parents' address. Contact preferences adjusted without my input. A credit monitoring request attached to my profile that I had never authorized. My phone buzzed on the desk. Robert. I let it ring. The woman excused herself to make copies. When she returned, the phone buzzed again, then stopped. I stepped outside to take the call. "Hey," Robert said, his voice calm, almost warm. "I heard you went to the bank." "Yes." "You didn't need to do that," he replied. "This could have been handled between us. There's a loan with my name on it." A pause, short but noticeable. "I was helping," he said. "You know how these things work. It understood you'd want me to take care of it. I was out of state." Another pause. "That doesn't mean I didn't have permission," he said. "You're my daughter." The words landed heavier than they should have. "If you report this," he continued, softer now, "there will be consequences. Not just for me." "For who?" "For everyone," he said. "I won't be able to absorb that kind of damage." The line went dead before I could respond. Back inside, the employee laid out a form and pointed to a highlighted section. "This authorizes us to escalate," she said. "Once it's submitted, we can't pull it back." I hesitated long enough for the silence to become awkward, then signed. Robert was waiting near the parking lot when I stepped outside. He leaned against his car like this was an accidental meeting. "You didn't have to go this far," he said. "You didn't have to do any of this," I replied. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I did it for you," he said. "Everything I've done has been about making sure you're okay." His hand shook when he took the pen the bank employee handed him moments later. He tried to steady it against the hood of the car, smiling tightly. "See," he added, "still fixing things." I watched the ink wobble as he signed. A phone rang, his. He answered immediately. "Yes," he said, "I understand." His face shifted while he listened. The color drained slowly, like someone turning down a dimmer. When he hung up, he looked at me, eyes sharp now. "You didn't think this through," he said. The bank employee stepped between us, voice firm but controlled. "Mr. Carter, we'll be opening a formal fraud review," she said. "You'll be contacted by our legal department." Robert's phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't ignore it. He turned away, already dialing back, walking fast toward his car, voice low and urgent as he spoke to someone who answered on the first ring while I stood there holding my copy of the paperwork, the words "investigation process" printed across the top as the employee reached for the door and told me we were done for now, and I followed her back inside, knowing the call he was making wasn't to family. The freeze hit before anyone explained it. My mom called early, voice already shaking. "The accounts won't let me transfer anything," she said. "Utilities bounced. The card declined at the grocery store." "They're reviewing," I said. "What did you tell them?" she snapped. The question landed harder than the situation itself. I told them the truth. Silence, then a sharp inhale. "You didn't have to destroy us to do that." By noon, the family knew. Robert made sure of it. Texts started coming in, no longer careful, no longer private. "You really accused your own father?" "Dad's health can't handle this stress." "This is cruel, Emily." One cousin posted vaguely online about false allegations ruining good men. A few likes appeared within minutes. Someone tagged someone else. The circle closed fast. Robert called my aunt, then my uncle, then anyone who would listen. By the time my brother reached out, his voice had already changed. "You need to stop," he said. "People think you're lying." "About what?" "That Dad forged anything," he replied. "They're saying you're confused or angry." "At least one of those is true," I said. He didn't laugh. That afternoon, the bank emailed an update. The scanned signature alone wasn't enough. Without handwriting analysis, it couldn't conclusively prove misuse. The sentence was polite. The meaning wasn't. A door I'd been leaning on disappeared. Maya met me outside my building, sitting on the curb like she'd been there a while. "They're pushing back," she said before I said anything. "The signature won't hold." Figures. She stood and brushed off her jeans. "Abusers don't rely on one trick," she added. "They rely on patterns." My mom showed up unannounced an hour later. She didn't come inside. We talked by her car. "Your father is humiliated," she said. "People are talking." "They should." She shook her head. "You don't understand what you've done." "What he's done?" She waved that away. "The camera," she said suddenly, "in the living room. It was turned off manually that day." The words came out like a confession she didn't mean to make. "Why were you checking the camera?" I asked. Her mouth tightened. "He asked me to," she said. "Said there was a glitch." That night, Maya pulled up the maintenance log she'd asked me to request weeks ago. The timestamp was clear. The system hadn't failed. Someone had accessed it directly. "Same day as the paperwork," she said. I nodded. "That's not impulsive," she added. "That's planning." Robert's next move was quieter. He stopped calling me and started calling everyone else. Invitations dried up. Replies slowed. When I walked into a family dinner I hadn't been uninvited from yet, conversations stalled like someone had hit pause. Robert hugged me in front of everyone. "Glad you're here," he said loudly. No one met my eyes. At work, my manager asked if everything was okay at home. The tone was sympathetic, but the subtext wasn't. Background checks had limits, but reputations didn't. The old approach wasn't working. Talking to him didn't work. Explaining didn't work. Being factual didn't work. Maya didn't offer comfort. "He makes you carry the risk," she said, leaning against my counter. "That's how he stays clean." "What do I do?" "You stop reacting," she replied, "and start choosing where this lands." The notification came while she was still there. Expanded review, multiple accounts, additional verification required. My name appeared more times than it should have. Maya watched my face change as I read. "They're widening it," she said. "Yes." She nodded once. "That's the moment," she said, "when it stops being personal." The email listed dates, reference numbers, departments. No accusations yet, just process. My phone buzzed again, a message from my brother. "Dad says you've gone too far." I didn't answer. Paper covered the table in my apartment. Bank letters, printouts, screenshots. Nothing was stacked neatly because there was no point pretending this was organized. The phone stayed face down beside my laptop. No messages, no missed calls. The silence from my family was louder than the shouting had been. The email from the bank sat open. Expanded review, multiple accounts, additional verification. It didn't accuse, it didn't reassure, it just waited. That was when the pattern stopped being theoretical. Silence had always been my default, not because I didn't notice things, but because keeping things smooth felt like a contribution. Let things slide. Don't escalate. Be the reasonable one. It made dinners easier, holidays shorter, conversations manageable. That habit had a cost. The signs had been there. Mail arriving at my parents' house long after I moved out. Robert asking questions about my salary that sounded casual but weren't. Comments about how clean my credit was, like it was a shared asset instead of mine. Each time the same decision came up. Say something and risk conflict, or let it go and keep the peace. I picked the second option every time. It wasn't generosity. It was avoidance dressed up as maturity. Giving Robert access to anything with my name on it had felt harmless back then. Temporary. Convenient. He framed it as help. I accepted it as family. The table creaked when I leaned back in my chair. Midnight crept closer on the clock. No one was coming to interrupt this moment. No one was going to soften it. A knock came at the door anyway. Maya didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped in, took one look at the mess, and pulled the chair out without asking. "Okay," she said, "show me." I slid the laptop toward her. She scanned the screen, then the papers. "This is just what triggered the alert," she said, "not the whole picture." "What do you mean?" "If he's been doing this for years," she replied, "he wouldn't risk it all on one loan." She pointed at the timeline. "Small amounts don't trip alarms. Spread out, they blend in." "That means a full audit," she said. "Everything tied to you, back to when you first had credit." The thought landed heavy. Not fear exactly, exposure. "That'll pull up everything," I said. "Stuff that has nothing to do with him." "Yes." "And they'll look at me like I was part of it." "Yes." She didn't say it kindly. She said it honestly. "This stops being about clearing your name quietly," she added. "This becomes about making sure your name doesn't keep getting used." I nodded. Not agreement yet. Recognition. Another list formed without effort. Times I had stayed neutral when neutrality only helped one side. Times I had answered vague questions without asking why. Times I had trusted tone over facts because it was easier than pushing back. None of it required emotion, just accounting. Maya closed the laptop gently. "If you don't do this," she said, "someone else will keep deciding for you." The phone buzzed for the first time all night. A notification from my mom. Just a question mark. I didn't pick it up. The form wasn't hard to find. Request full credit history, authorization, digital signature. Each field filled cleanly. Name, social, dates. A warning box popped up halfway through. This process may uncover additional activity. Results may take several weeks. Some findings may require further investigation. I checked the box. Maya stood and stretched. This is the part where people get scared, she said, because it's not reversible. Nothing about this has been reversible, I replied. She smiled once, quick and tight. That's progress. The clock on the stove read 11:57. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the page, waiting. I scrolled once more, read the terms. Not carefully, honestly. Submit. The confirmation message appeared, plain and immediate. Request received. Maya was already putting her jacket on. They'll contact you, she said. Probably sooner than you want. My finger hovered over the trackpad as the next email started to load. Subject line, unfinished. The timestamp flipping over to midnight while the system processed everything I had just handed over. The first audit summary arrived as a spreadsheet, not a letter. No greeting, no explanation, just rows. Accounts I recognized sat at the top, the loan, the alert. Then the list kept going. Small lines, credit cards with low limits, store accounts I'd never shopped at, a co-signed line tied to a name I'd heard growing up, someone who used to stop by the house on weekends. Dates spread out just enough to look random, amounts just low enough to stay invisible. This wasn't one mistake, it was maintenance. Maya came over again, took one look, and didn't sit down. How bad, she asked. I scrolled. Her mouth tightened. He's been farming your name, she said, slow and clean. The questions Robert used to ask lined up differently now. How much I made after taxes, whether my raise was permanent, if I planned to change jobs. None of it sounded suspicious at the time. It sounded parental, interested, responsible. Keep your credit spotless, he'd say. You never know when you'll need it. I had nodded like it was advice. It wasn't. It was inventory control. Another email came in before I finished the spreadsheet. This one had letterhead, a law firm I didn't recognize. The wording was careful. Failure to object in a timely manner may be interpreted as implied consent. Maya read it twice. They're setting you up as passive, she said. Not a victim, a participant who didn't complain. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works, she replied. If they can blur the line, they buy him time. A name disappeared from the witness list later that day. Someone at the bank had been willing to confirm Robert's frequent visits, his habit of handling paperwork alone. After a meeting with his attorney, the story changed. Memory got fuzzy. Dates unclear. The message was subtle. It didn't need to be loud. Another document arrived that evening, a note from the bank clarifying that certain records required independent verification to remain admissible. The scanned signature slipped into a gray zone. Not false, not proven. A piece I had leaned on went soft. Robert didn't call. He didn't need to. My brother texted instead. Dad says this is spiraling. No question mark, just a statement. The spreadsheet updated overnight. New tabs appeared. Third-party ties, indirect exposure. I stopped recognizing half the names. Some were tied to businesses Robert had mentioned in passing, always framed as favors, helping someone get back on their feet, covering a gap, being generous. He hadn't been generous. He'd been laundering trust. Maya stayed quiet while I scrolled. This isn't about family anymore, she said finally. It hasn't been for a while. The realization didn't come with panic. It came with clarity. This wasn't a personal dispute that got out of hand. It was a system, one that worked because it looked boring. Another email arrived marked official, federal seal at the top, language stripped of comfort. You are requested to appear for a formal interview regarding potential financial fraud. Date, time, location. I read it twice, then once more. Maya exhaled. Okay, she said. That's real. The call from Robert came 10 minutes later. Did you get something from the bank, he asked. Yes. This is still fixable, he said. You just need to stop cooperating. I am cooperating, I replied, with the right people. He laughed once, short and sharp. You think they care about you, he said. They care about closing cases. Then you should have kept mine out of it. Silence stretched. You don't understand what you're involved in, he said. I understand more than you think. He hung up. The appointment notice sat open on my screen. The address wasn't local. This had moved beyond branch offices and polite emails. Maya picked up her bag. From here on out, she said, everything you say goes on record. I nodded. The conference room was already full when I walked in. Not crowded, just occupied with purpose. Laptops open, folders stacked. Everyone knew why they were there, and no one needed a warm-up. Robert sat across from me with his attorney. He looked smaller than usual. Not nervous, contained. The version of him that showed up when things were no longer social. The investigator opened the session without ceremony. This is a joint review, she said. We're here to establish facts. That was the tone I'd chosen this room for. No one asked how anyone felt. The first document went up on the screen. Travel records, flights, hotel receipts, email approvals. Dates aligned cleanly with the temporary authorizations Robert claimed were signed in person. I wasn't in Texas, I said. I can verify that. And his attorney leaned forward. Families don't always document verbal permissions, he said. There was an understanding. Robert nodded along. She trusted me, he added. I handled things for her. The investigator turned to me. Do you dispute granting verbal authorization? Yes, Robert sighed, like this was exhausting. You didn't object at the time, his attorney said. That matters. The second set of documents followed. Bank visit logs, entry timestamps, badge access records. Robert's name appeared repeatedly. Mine didn't. That doesn't mean anything, Robert said quickly. She didn't need to be there. I waited until the investigator looked back at me. There's more, I said. The voicemail played through the room's speakers, an old message buried deep in my phone from a year I barely remembered. Hey, Robert's voice said, casual and unguarded. I finished the paperwork under your name. Everything's handled. Silence settled. Not dramatic. Final. His attorney reached for the mute button, too late. That voicemail lacks context, he said. It has my voice, Robert said, then stopped. The investigator didn't look at him. That statement aligns with a pattern, she said, not a one-off. Robert leaned back, arms crossed. This is being twisted, he said. I was helping my daughter. The investigator turned to me again. Why didn't you catch this sooner, she asked. Because I trusted my father. The words landed harder than anything else that day. No emphasis, no edge, just the truth. No one spoke for a moment. Robert's attorney cleared his throat. We'd like a brief recess. Denied, the investigator said. She read from her notes outlining overlapping accounts, third-party benefits, consistent use of a single identity to maintain external credibility. The language stayed neutral. The meaning didn't. This appears to be systematic, she said. Robert shook his head. You're making it sound criminal. It may be, she replied. The decision wasn't final. Everyone knew that. But the shift had already happened. Robert was no longer the center explaining things. He was the subject. The investigator slid a document across the table. Based on what we've reviewed, she said, this file is being referred to senior legal counsel. Robert stood up. You can't do that, he said. We already did. His phone buzzed on the table. He didn't look at it. His attorney leaned in, voice low, urgent. We'll be in touch, he said, already gathering papers. Robert didn't look at me as he walked toward the door. The handle clicked. The room felt larger with him gone. The investigator closed her folder. We'll contact you with next steps, she said. The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They showed up in pieces, spread across ordinary days, which somehow made them harder to ignore. My mother called first, not to argue this time, but to ask how to pay the electric bill. The account Robert had always managed no longer worked. She sounded embarrassed, like she was borrowing something intangible. I didn't know where anything was, she said. Neither did anyone else. The bank letters followed, formal notices confirming Robert no longer had authority to act on behalf of anyone but himself. Credit lines closed, accounts reassigned. One email mentioned reputational risk without naming names. Another confirmed a partner had withdrawn from a joint project. The tone stayed professional. The effect didn't. Family gatherings changed shape. People talked around problems instead of handing them off. Decisions stalled. Questions went unanswered because the person who used to answer them wasn't allowed to anymore. No one asked me to fix it. Robert tried once. He waited outside my office near the end of the day, leaning against the brick wall like he'd done before, like familiarity might still work. "We should talk," he said. "There's nothing to discuss." He followed me a few steps. "I never meant to hurt you." That was as close as he got. "I know," I said. He blinked, unsure how to respond to that. "This has gone far enough," he added. "We're family." I stopped walking. "If you need help," I said, "you should talk to your lawyer." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't apologize. He just looked tired, like someone who'd lost access to something he assumed was permanent. My mother asked later if I could come by more often. I said yes, and meant it, but only on my terms. We didn't discuss Robert. We didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't a conversation. It was distance. The last of the paperwork took a full afternoon, closing old authorizations, updating emergency contacts, changing passwords I hadn't thought about in years. Each confirmation email landed with a soft chime, one after another, like a system slowly relearning who it belonged to. I changed my number that night, sent the new one to a short list. Everyone else could reach me through email if it mattered. The apartment came next, smaller, closer to work, nothing fancy. The lease didn't list anyone else's name. Maya helped me move the last box. "You going to miss the old place?" she asked. "It wasn't mine," I said. She laughed once. "That tracks." While she taped the last box shut, I opened my laptop and created a folder, dragged every email, every notice, every transcript into it, labeled it Family Event, Austin. Maya glanced over. "Dark," she said. "Accurate." She left with a wave and a reminder to eat something. The place was empty after that. No echoes, no unfinished conversations. I took the spare key to my parents' house out of my bag and set it on the counter. Not as a message, just a boundary. The door locked smoothly. No resistance. The phone stayed still on the table. No buzzing, no missed calls stacking up. Tomorrow would look ordinary. Work, groceries, emails, things that didn't require permission. The key stayed where it was as the light went off. The lock clicked into place from my side of the door, and the hallway outside faded from relevance without asking anything else of me.